So the first point to cover tonight is, what I said at the beginning, we teach other people how it's okay to treat us. And that's really, really important, because in relationships, it's a two-way street. We each have a part in the relationship. And so if something isn't working for me, which is the whole point of this discussion of boundaries, then it's my job to set and enforce that boundary. It's my job to let the other person know that that's not okay. So as I said here, taking responsibility for our lives means being conscious of the messages we send to others regarding what will be tolerated or not in the relationship. So we have a part to play in every relationship and in every situation that challenges us. And the part that we play is to, number one, is to be conscious of the messages that we're sending, and number two is to take responsibility for our part in that situation. So this is the first thing, is to notice, okay, so I have been sending this message to my boss, to my girlfriend, to my family, to my clients, that it's okay for them to treat me or interact with me in a certain way. And then I have to take a step back and say, okay, if this is not working for me, then it's my job to set that right, to let them know the new rules, the new guidelines, what I am willing to accept in that situation. But unfortunately, that's only the first part of it. Because what happens is, this is also good. Boundaries with strangers or acquaintances are usually much simpler compared to boundaries with family, friends, and lovers. Strong emotional attachments can make it difficult to set healthy dividing lines between people. Yet this is exactly why we need them. So I alluded to this last week, and that is to say the closer we are to somebody, the more we need to have healthy boundaries with them. Again, setting boundaries with strangers, setting boundaries with acquaintances, people we don't spend a lot of time with, I think is relatively easy in most cases compared to the situation where we have a long-standing and emotionally deep relationship with somebody. And especially if that relationship has been ongoing. So we have expectations of them, they have expectations of us. We have sent them messages about how it's okay to treat us, how it's okay to interact with us, what we will accept and what we will not accept. And then, this is the biggest point. This was the biggest aha moment for me, probably in my entire, navigating the topics we've been discussing in this book, certainly in terms of understanding boundaries, understanding that my boundaries are for me. They're not for other people. What I've discovered for me is that it's actually insane for me to expect other people to respect my boundaries. It's unreasonable, and it could be, insane for me to actually believe that. And what I found for me, as I said again in the audiobook, I was using my boundaries to try to control somebody else's behavior. But what I recognized was, just because I'm using a fancy word like boundaries, I'm still trying to control somebody else's behavior, and control is control. And yet I found that for me, that usually didn't work very well. Especially once they realized that my way was not the best way for them. So all the sweet talking and or threatening and or controlling and or manipulating that I thought I was doing, often backfired. And they ended up ignoring those boundaries anyway. So that's when I realized that my boundaries were for me, not other people. We talked about this in chapter 2 and chapter 3. We are powerless over other people, period, end of conversation. At least the way we define power. In chapter 3, I define true power as the ability to consciously choose and or change our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. And I also said in that chapter that we are powerless. We do not have the ability to choose or change somebody else's thoughts, feelings, words, or actions. If they go along with our way, then they're choosing that for themselves. I am not making somebody change their behavior, change the way they think, the way they feel. If they change, it's because they're choosing to. Doesn't mean we don't negotiate. It doesn't mean we don't let people know what's working for us and what's not working for us. That's all part of a healthy relationship. Sharing, what our needs might be, although it's nobody else's job to meet my needs. But that's part of the relationship. We talk about stuff, we communicate, we negotiate. So this means we can't control what other people say or do. But again, we're not powerless over ourselves. We always have the ability to choose what we think, feel, say, and do. So the example from the audiobook tonight was in that moment when I realized that if I was not happy with getting those phone calls late at night, then it was up to me to nip that conversation in the bud and to change who I was being in that moment. All up until that point, I was always trying to change who he was in the moment. But as I just said, true power is the ability to change our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions, not somebody else's. So I was actually more, even than trying to change him, I was hoping and wishing that he would just kind of get with the program. And that was insanity. That was unreasonable. It certainly didn't work. So I had to change my thoughts, feelings, words, and actions when I was enforcing that boundary. And if I don't want to get phone calls late at night from a client, it's up to me to get off the phone. And as I said in the reading tonight, there was a moment there where I didn't know if I was going to make it. I had so much fear around that. And my heart was pounding, and I was lightheaded, and my hands were shaking, and I wasn't sure I was going to make it. But once I took that action, once I set that boundary and enforced it with myself, everything changed. The relationship changed, how I related to other people changed. I mean, that was a seminal moment for me. I still have challenges even 30 years later, 25 years later. Standing up for myself, taking care of myself. But that was the beginning. I think that was one of the first major hurdles for me. And when I stepped through that fear, when I took that action and stepped through that fear, everything began to change.